You're listening to Himalayan Adventure by Vaile. Chapter 7.
Later that night, Mohawk, Maine, and Flattop found a 24-hour internet cafe in the center of the Kathmandu Valley Business District. It was an old brick building with about a dozen computers and monitors set up on several rows of rickety wooden tables. A few people were sitting on plastic chairs and typing emails. Discolored posters of the Himalayas were stuck to the walls with masking tape that was peeling off at the edges. It was the kind of place frequented by backpackers who wanted to email family and friends back home, wherever home was for them. The young Nepalese man sitting at the front desk rubbed his tired eyes, stared at the silver-haired giants in disbelief, then pointed them towards one of the computers near the back of the room. The GXs had a basic understanding of how to use the internet because they had been taught during their military training. None of them had ever used a computer for enjoyment before, and it wouldn't have occurred to them. The computers they used in North Korea were heavily restricted, and they had no access to virtually all internet sites. They did, however, know how to use www.hotmail.com because their orders were to contact North Korea using email if they needed further instructions to complete their mission. But if they did contact North Korea using email, they had to pretend to be writing a harmless update about their travels to their parents. Flattop's fingers hovered over the keyboard as he tried to compose the message in his head. "We need to phrase this carefully," he whispered. "Shift over," Maine said. "I know what to write." Flattop slid his chair aside and Maine moved in front of the computer and started typing. The message read as follows: to Grand Marshal at hotmail.com. Hi, Dad. We're on vacation now and having a great time. The plane trip was fine and we had no trouble at the airport. But that tooth I was worried about has turned out to be a problem, and we might have to stay a bit longer as a result. There's a professor here that can help, but it's difficult to make an appointment to see her. We can either wait in Kathmandu until we get an appointment, or we can try and see her in one of her other offices. What do you think I should do? Give my best to Mum. M. After asking his brothers if they had anything else to add, Maine hit send and then logged out of Hotmail. He didn't expect to get a reply for at least 14 hours because the email probably had to go through a dozen different levels of command back in North Korea. In fact, it was entirely possible that their orders would come from the Grand Marshal himself. If that was the case, they wouldn't have any instructions until midday tomorrow. After paying the Nepalese man at the front desk, the trio made their way along the dark and winding streets, heading in the direction of their small hotel. Maine struck up a conversation to take his mind off the surrounding darkness. "Do you guys ever wonder about our parents?" he asked. Flattop snorted loudly, like a short blast of air coming from a horse's nostrils. "We're orphans," he grunted. "We have no parents." "Yeah, I know," mused Maine, "but we must have had parents in the beginning. Everybody has a mother and a father. You're just thinking about this because of our orders to pretend to be writing to our mum and dad in emails we send to North Korea, right?" asked Mohawk. Flattop laughed. "I can guarantee you that the Grand Marshal is not our dad, much too short for starters." Maine shone his torch in his brother's face briefly. Flattop's silver eyebrows glittered like Christmas tinsel in the night. It was late, dark, and he was not in the mood for jokes. "I'm serious," he said. "Don't you think it's kind of weird that we can't remember our mother or father?" "No," Flattop replied. "Our parents, whoever they were, gave us to the orphanage when we were very young, too young to remember anything about them. I'm not surprised that I can't remember what they looked like, and to tell you the truth, I don't really want to." "Why?" asked Maine. Flattop shrugged his massive shoulders. "They didn't want us, so why should we care about them?" he replied. "Anyway, the fact is that they gave us away, and it was the best thing that ever happened to us. The army adopted us when we were kids and gave us everything we needed. I'd much rather be a soldier than a civilian trying to scrape together enough money to feed myself for another day." Mohawk nodded in agreement and said, "We should thank our lucky stars that we didn't get split up after the army adopted us." "Who knows?" replied Maine, seizing on his brother's comment. "Maybe we were split up. Maybe there are really 5 of us and the other 2 are walking around asking the same questions that we are." "For the record," said Flattop, "I'm not asking any questions." "You're asking the questions. At least one of us is," Maine muttered. "All right," Flattop grunted. "So you think we might have 2 extra brothers? Why stop at just 2? We could have 10 more brothers that we don't know about, or 20. Or 50, Maine rolled his eyes. "Now you're being ridiculous," he retorted. "No, I'm not," insisted Flattop. "I'm just saying that I believe what our commanders tell us." Our parents didn't want us, we were given to the orphanage and then adopted by the army. Makes sense to me. Besides, why would they lie to us? Because they want to control us, exclaimed Maine. Flattop frowned and said, how do they control us by lying about whether we have more brothers? Because if we knew we had more brothers, we might go looking for them instead of following our orders, Maine said. But we don't have any brothers, Flattop answered. But we don't know that. That's the point, Maine roared, exasperated. We only know what they tell us. Yeah, and they tell us what we need to know and nothing more, Flattop declared. Saves everybody a lot of time if you ask me. Don't you ever want to know more than what you need to know? Asked Maine. Flattop shook his head and said, not really, no. You might learn something interesting or useful, Maine pressed. If it was useful information, our commander would have told us already, replied Flattop. Mohawk ran his hand through his silver fan of hair thoughtfully. Now that you mention it, do you remember back in North Korea, the Grand Marshal said that after we finish the mission, our masters should liquidate the GXs? He asked. Yeah, I remember, Maine replied. We should try and work out what it means. That's not part of our orders, Flattop grunted, but I'm not going to try and stop you. Good for you, laughed Maine, jabbing his brother in the ribs with his knuckle, because I would just throw you in the nearest broom closet and leave you there to sweat for a while. Flattop fended off his brother's attack playfully. Oh yeah, he said, I'll steal the batteries from your torch and then where will you be? Standing beneath the nearest street light, I bet, chuckled Mohawk. You won't be laughing so hard when we drag you up that mountain, said Maine. Don't worry about me, I'll just keep my eyes on the horizon the whole time, Flattop replied. That's not going to help you, the horizon will be a long way down as well, laughed Maine. The trio continued along the path, sparring playfully and goading one another with barbed comments about their phobias. After a while, they turned a corner and settled back into a comfortable stroll. Flattop stood between Mohawk and Maine, with his powerful arms gripping their shoulders in a gesture of brotherly affection. Anyway, Flattop began, I wouldn't worry your pretty little heads. I'm sure that when we need to know what liquidate the GXs means, our commanders will tell us. Maine did not share his brother's unreasoning faith. The hotel was quiet when they arrived, and there was nobody at the reception desk. With hardly a word passing between them, they went to their separate rooms and closed the doors. There was no need to lock them. An army of thieves and robbers would be no match for one sleepy GX super soldier. The cheap hotel beds weren't designed for gorillas or genetically engineered half-human, half-gorillas, and the wooden frames creaked in protest when the GXs laid their massive bodies down on the mattresses. Mohawk and Flattop went to sleep immediately. Maine lay awake with his huge hands resting comfortably behind his head, his fingers intertwined in his silver mane of hair, staring up at the dim light bulb hanging from the stained ceiling and thinking about everything that had happened since he'd arrived in Kathmandu. It had been his first day of freedom, and he wasn't ready for it to end yet. He could hear his brothers snoring loudly in the nearby rooms. They both sounded like an elephant trying to suck in air with a knot tied in its trunk. After a while, he let his eyes slowly close and his thoughts drift. Then he fell asleep, a free man in Nepal. He slept with the light on.
That is the end of this chapter. To listen to the next chapter on YouTube or to purchase the digital ebook from Amazon, see the links in the description.